At the turn of 2023, I began what many would consider a twink death, a term for when a young man loses his twinkish qualities to the sands of time, and many others have undergone the same. But there are some issues with not only the concept of twink death, but with the word twink itself, along with many other words in its class. First, an explanation of what the word even means is in order. Having grown to unanimity firstly in queer culture, and later among the broader youth population, the word twink has come to represent not only an archetype among gay males, but a societal symbol. A twink was once a body type within an age bracket, but the definition has ballooned to encompass a significant range of ideas with their own oblique normative baggage, from the typecasting to the objectifying to the circuitously homophobic. The recent cultural lineage of twink, like a river, has a definitive origin point, that being gay culture in the 90s, but also has an ongoing set of changes that can trace its roots back to many locations. It began to rise to popular use in the 90s when it replaced the term chicken, which referred to a young and attractive gay man. Twink subtly differed, however, emphasizing the physical aspects of the subject, a slim figure and minimal to no body or facial hair. Little information exists on the definitive etymological origins of the term twink, but the popular narrative links back to the snack food Twinkie being cream-filled, a euphemistic allegory for semen. Such an origin, accurate or not, implies a lot about how gay men apply the word twink to each other and to themselves, as a sexual descriptor for not just young, thin, hairless gay men, but for sexualized and effeminate gay bottoms. Much of the term's baggage comes from gay hookup apps, most notably Grindr, which hosts numerous self-identified twinks. Users of hookup apps will identify with a certain tribe, including large hairy men known as bears, muscular men known as hunks, and our familiar twinks. Going further back to the source, much of gay hookup culture, especially as it relates to tribe identification, is informed by and derived from pornography. In a symbiotic relationship, pornography to an extent informs the culture, people gaining a sexual vocabulary from what they see online to use as identifiers and filters for people on the online hookup scene. And, on the other hand, gay hookup culture influences porn where terms like twink, hunk, bear, etc. allow users to filter the content to their preferences. Pornography and hookup culture inform each other, but the most relevant side of the coin here is the way porn leads into hookups, because from this point, we can draw many more lines to a wider array of cultures all the way to mainstream culture and mainstream use of the term twink. As once again the ostensible origin suggests, twink implies penetrative recipients. Not only that, but its broader use implies effeminacy. The relationship between bottoming and femininity runs both ways. The assumed bottoming of twinks feeds into the idea of their effeminateness, and their assumed effeminateness feeds into the idea of bottoming, making clear the link between femininity and sexual receptivity, a societal association that reinforces a greater degree of gender norms than a basic male-female divide. The broader attitude towards gender suggests that males and females have their own roles to fill, bottoming being a role designated to women. However, gender and gender expression have evolved significantly in the public eye within the past few decades. A more progressive culture like the United States hosts millions of people with progressive social views, including the idea that men can adopt traditionally female sexual roles and vice versa. Said attitude has led to the widespread adoption of words like twink among mostly young and progressive-leaning people. However, while the male-female divide has dissolved among many, leading to the adoption of a new gender vocabulary, the masculine-feminine divide remains very powerful in people's perceptions. When identifying as a twink, one generally is prescribed the baggage of bottoming in sexual relationships, for better and for worse. The term's use not only has the intended implications of those identifying with it in a sexual context, as bottoms wanting to be filled with cream, it has implications for those, homosexual or otherwise, prescribed a twink identity by peers or by youths at large. And here we must delineate between describing someone as a twink and prescribing them twinkhood. As stated, many men consider themselves twinks, but a much larger amount don't yet still receive the label. Although said men may not necessarily be directly referred to with the term in all cases, the societal archetype heavily influences people's perception of these men, especially the more attractive men. They are prescribed a twink identity, branding them with femininity and therefore sexual passivity. Labeling someone intentionally, unintentionally, or invisibly with this social role can easily lead to negative outcomes. They could face subtle stigmas that practically every person holds against those in feminine positions. They could face stronger stigma against specifically feminine males. They could face the personal burden of being typecast into something they don't feel represents who they are. Many will weaponize the queer associations to use twink as a substitute for a slur. And on top of that, twinks face the societal expectation to remain thin and youthful, lest they undergo twink death. Twink death, as a concept, reinforces negative norms around youth and weight. No one stays young forever, and we absolutely should not encourage looking thin for the sake of it, not to mention that metabolism slows down with age. While the topics overlap, age and weight branch into very different territories. When it comes to age, for instance, you easily get into very hot water with fetishizing youth as a whole, and pushing the barriers of consent down the ladder. When it comes to porn categories like teen and barely legal, consider this. Would the people consuming these categories draw the line if the age of full consent dropped to 16, 15, 14, or are they intentionally seeking out the youngest possible adolescents? Granted, many consumers here likely fall around or below the age of consent themselves, but that doesn't excuse the fetishization of youth on the whole. Twinkness expressly fetishizes youth, molding a desirable sexual category around it. In addition, relating age to death, while technically apt, reinforces, and get ready for a woke word here, ageist ideas. People can be attractive and old. People can be more attractive old than young. People are also more experienced and better at giving consent when they're older. If anything, we should celebrate age when it comes to sexuality, but the concepts and language of male queerness can very easily hinder this. On the other hand, when it comes to weight, the idea that heaviness is a form of death has very clear negative outcomes. It's horrible for self-esteem, and having experienced eating pathology firsthand, I can tell you that wanting to maintain or achieve the ideal twink figure can lead people to practically starving themselves, a threshold that many people approach or cross without even realizing. When I underwent twink death, I began to lose confidence in myself, especially in my body. While I'm still young, I have gained weight, a feature that social norms dictate as masculine. Suddenly gaining masculinity while previously fitting into a feminine role caused a lot of self-esteem problems for me. However, those pressures existed and weighed on me beforehand. I felt the stress not necessarily created by the concept of twinkhood, but certainly reinforced by it. I felt inadequate even before my weight gain, like I didn't meet the standards that the language of male homosexuality laid out, words like twink, and words like femboy. Take what we've discussed and multiply the issues by 10. Not only is femboy a sexualized term, it's a pornographic term in pornographic community. Not only are femboys typecast, they are patronized, infantilized, and objectified. Not only does femboy imply youth, femininity, penetrative receptivity, and skinniness, it outright demands them. The word femboy seems straightforward, defined simply as a young feminine male, but many small and large communities have organized around the identity on places like Reddit and Discord. r/femboy has 600,000 members, and Discord servers with the femboy tag have member counts in the tens of thousands. But the term holds far more sexual connotation than it lets on. As stated, multiply the pornographic origins of twink by 10 and you have yourself the word femboy. Porn not just informing, but creating the femboy identity. I would dramatically reveal the sexual underbelly of these communities, but I could more accurately call it a regular belly with its front-facing nature. When looking at the femboy tag on Discord, the site asks if you're over 18 due to the sexual content, and the porn subreddit r/femboys has 1.8 million members to the other 600k. And even r/femboy, the clean subreddit, has people emphasizing their exposed legs and stomachs in photos and titles, a cultural touchstone also found in Discord communities with channels dedicated to posting thighs. You're experienced on this one, I bet. No. A problem arises here when members of these communities range from their very early teens to young adulthood. Femboy servers often host children posting sexualized images of their bodies viewable by anyone, including older people. Obviously, I can't prove much here because of the nature of the content, but I joined over 60 femboy tagged servers, and after some time, one of them went far enough to get terminated for violating child safety rules. Keep in mind, that can only happen after enough reports, which people generally don't do, as well as only after it crosses a certain line of explicit sexuality. Children sexualizing themselves not only has the negative outcome of increasing the amount of material available to potentially abusive ephebophiles, but has negative mental health outcomes for the child. I need no citation for the fact that non-consensual sexual experiences lead to trouble later in life, and young teenagers cannot fully consent to something as serious as sharing sexual content of themselves online. That content can make its way anywhere, and sexually exposing yourself without a full understanding of the act can make you feel violated. Proof is again fickle for a topic like this, but having spent time in these communities, I've seen it firsthand. I once met a 14-year-old selling explicit photos of their body to strangers. Many community members actively engage in sexual roleplay, sometimes with older people, hence the tweet, "A femboy is a 14-year-old who loves the attention of pedophiles." These communities go beyond facilitating minor sexual activity. In the worst cases, they endorse and encourage it, but to be clear, the blame lies not with the victims, but with the older community leaders who should know better, as well as the broader cultural problems. The rampant and rapid sexual engagement in femboy spaces also breeds porn addiction from a very young age. Speaking to femboys online reveals a staggeringly high ratio between their simulated sexual experience and their physical sexual experience, creating a deficit in their understanding of sex. This can introduce very harmful conceptualizations of sensuality. As a species literally built around sex, placed in a broader Western culture consistently centering it, we extend past glamorizing intimacy into mythologizing it, taking people's conception from a pleasant experience to a transcendentally gratifying and fulfilling one. You can find this perception at its most radical within incel communities, where they frame sex as the express end state of ultimate happiness. To a lesser extent, but still a meaningful one, femboy culture creates the same mythology of idealized sex. Within the mythos, kinks and fetishes play a large role, primarily those of submission and domination. While twinks assumedly bottom, femboys submit. And again, assumed submission reinforces the sexual, social, and societal roles of feminine deference. These younger teens who find themselves entrenched in the culture often develop an unhealthy relationship with their sexuality because of the attitudes not just around sex, but around their bodies. Femboy culture very much prioritizes thinness. As mentioned, the twink label carries with it low body weight, and the femboy label does the same in a more implicit way. Rather than existing in the definition, the state of radically feminine manhood heavily implies it. For a man to be feminine, he must perform it to the utmost degree. They must be very youthful, very thin, and very sexually submissive, performing these roles to the largest extent that one can, even more than women. A woman can be older, overweight, and socially or sexually dominant, but still fit the category, while an older, overweight, dominant femboy is an oxymoron. So, considering the radical extent to which femboys must perform femininity, we can conclude that the label has harmful outcomes for self-image. Men's body structure, facial structure, fat distribution, etc. can very easily exterminate them from acceptance in the category, especially after puberty, again, buttressing the problems with very young people participating in these communities. To be a femboy, one must be very attractive. The wildly unrealistic standards on all fronts leads much of femboy culture to exist through drawings. Drawn femboy art and pornography influence the culture in no small measure, further heightening the standards as drawn femboys receive the most cartoonishly feminine characteristics. The exclusionary standards, along with their feminine nature, leads femboys into serious objectification. Bisexual men who use the internet too much end up sexualizing every mention of femboys. I call on you, bisexual men online, to keep yourself safe with your language because your behavior reinforces negative norms. As my hatred slips through this video, I hope it lands directly on every person that exclusively references femboys as cartoonish sex objects, and on everyone that utters the word bussy. For those unaware, bussy, short for boy pussy, generally refers to a feminine gay man's butthole. Quite clearly, this excludes trans men who have vaginas, yet the term persists in queer communities where for some reason boy pussy does not refer to a boy pussy. My hatred for this word stems not only from the definitional inaccuracy, but from its users, namely the guy whose he-they bio does a lot of heavy lifting and spends too much time online. Broadly, the words bussy, femboy, and twink represent a tragedy of the gay community. As a symptom of unwellness in queer culture, it shows us that when people are pushed to the fringes, they end up harmed, be it through objectification, porn addiction, or unrealistic standards for sex and physicality. They invent stupid language for stupid problems in a world not built for them. Femboys are not well, not treated right, and not represented realistically. Their femininity, and by extension their weight and youth, is fetishized. When that vanishes, so does their social value. They are spat out. I previously identified in many ways with the femboy community, and defining myself as a twink didn't seem too far-fetched. However, as I've grown a little older, I've come to see the harm of these labels and communities, the subtle harm that they bring to queer people and to society at large. And now, as a stereotypical essayist, I will insert a call to action. Stop prescribing people twink identities, stop bolstering femboy culture, and stop using the word bussy. I don't want to hear these words anymore. They make me angry. They make me very